We as Conservatives believe in clearing the way to get pipelines built. In other words, we would build a pipeline without a carbon tax. They would build a carbon tax without a pipeline.
Great speech last night from Pierre Poliev, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, about the pipeline. And I'm going to play a large portion of that later. Great stuff. And I'll explain why I'm going to show that in a minute. You're watching Stand on Guard. We're broadcasting live from Ottawa. Thank you for watching today. We'll be right back.
The Prime Minister lied and his minions continue to lie.
Your home is your castle. We're calling on the government to introduce and immediately pass the Stand on Guard law.
But we also need to resolve to resist.
Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. No. We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
For those of you who were expecting the interview with Katie Pesitney to be airing right now, we're going to watch that one later today because there was just so much breaking news going on last night. Decided we had to devote more time to it. We've been showing you a couple of segments from that interview near the end of this broadcast. And it's an incredible interview. I invite you to watch it. It's going to be airing at 1 p.m. Eastern time today. Katie talks about some incredible phenomena that's been going on, not just the rebirth of the farm, what she and her mom have planned, but why was the number 79 written by the CFIA on the death pen area? Cryptically written. What were they trying to say? Was that the number of ostriches that they either disposed of or stole? Is that what she was getting at? Find out later. It's all in the interview, and it's fascinating. But let's get on to what happened last night. Of course, the pipeline. This is incredible. Here we go. Pierre Poliev writes a motion mirroring, almost reflecting, almost exactly copying the language of this memorandum of understanding between the Carney government and the government of Alberta for the construction of a pipeline. The Liberals all vote against it because, it's a stunt. I tell you what, who's guilty of the stunt? The Carney government. I don't believe they want a pipeline, because if they really wanted a pipeline built, they would have supported this motion and just said, okay, Poliev, ball's in your court. Yeah, they could have turned this around and said, yeah, we're going to support your motion, Poliev. Sure. That means we're sincere about it, and you have to shut up now in question period. Now he can't. Now he won't be shutting up about this now because the Liberals have revealed themselves to be absolute frauds. Anyway, speaking of frauds, the Carney government is so neck deep. I was going to say it's not knee deep. It's certainly not ankle deep. It's not knee deep. It's not waist deep. It's not even chest high. It is up to its neck deep in corruption. And let's find out why.
Ethics disclosure states that he is entitled to carried interest payments, aka future bonus pay, in respect of the performance of Brookfield's global transition funds. But what is missing from Mr. Carney's disclosure are the holdings in this fund, the companies that this fund is invested in. Would you agree that this is a significant and material omission from the standpoint of knowing the extent of Mr. Carney's conflicts of interest?
Yes, and unfortunately, though, the disclosure rules allow for secret investments, essentially. The details are not provided.
So how does that make you feel? Secrecy. This is all being done in clandestine situation. So I think there's something wrong here. Remember, we showed you this whole video, but here's the part of this incredible expose here.
Brookfield front loads the entire contract for the full 15 years because it's black and white and jumps straight to the finish line to get paid instantly. Think about that. Guys, I'm not talking about a little bit of money. The $6 million in stocks that they talk about, they told you that on purpose. Because when the Brookfield representative was in the House being questioned recently, who was clearly trembling, mentioned the stocks, but he also said carried interest.
It increases, the value of those instruments increase. There are also carried interest entitlements that relate more specifically to funds that we manage.
Which means your guy, Mark Carney, is going to be a billionaire. Do you understand why he came to Canada? Because he spent 4 years building this and trying to access our pension funds because it's cash on hand. He needed it. That's what he was after the entire time. And I said it, and he literally said it in a press conference the other day and mentioned the $2 trillion.
Over the next year, we will take significant measures to elevate our relationship. The Minister of Finance will lead a delegation of Canada's pension funds, $2 trillion of capital, which almost begins to sound significant in the UAE. $2 trillion in capital, the Canadian pension funds. They will come here next year early to deepen existing partnerships and develop new investment opportunities together.
It might be a coincidence. I ran a statistical analysis on the probability of all of those policies landing and those investments occurring in that exact chronological order. And it would be the same as if you built a plane, I built a runway, and you accidentally landed on that runway and not even knew where it was. It is impossible. It was facilitated by Carney, Trudeau.
Yeah, it's impossible, except it's not under Mark Carney here. You know, it's just incredible here. What's going on? This is Michael Barrett makes this point. Canada shouldn't have a PM who can profit from his own decision when his investments are tied to Brookfield. Every call raises questions. Mr. Carney's future compensation is tied to the success of Brookfield, says the ethics commissioner. So why won't he sell? Thanks for Blacklock's report for that one, by the way. This is all incredible, incredible information.
Mr. Carney was lobbied by North River Midstream. Mr. Carney, on May 6th, a week later, met with Sam Pollock, the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure in Washington, D.C. Brookfield Infrastructure is also subject to the ethics screen. It has recently come to light that in October, Mr. Carney met with the Chief Operating Officer of Brookfield, Justin Bieber, in the Prime Minister's office. So here we have a pattern of Mr. Carney meeting with top Brookfield executives who have direct access to the Prime Minister, as well as Brookfield-owned companies. Is this what you envisioned when you set up the ethics screen?
I wish you would not focus on the ethics screen, but understand the system of it. The system is clear. If there's a conflict of interest, the Prime Minister has to recuse himself, and his recusal is made public. That is the basic rule, to help him live up with it, because he's a busy man and he deals with thousands of issues. The office has established a screen to try to make sure that he doesn't get exposed to it. And that's what the so you're asking me what the screen has to do?
The conflicts involving the Prime Minister are so vast with respect to Brookfield that you saw it necessary to implement a screen as a precautionary measure. And yet, and Mr. Sabia said that you told the Prime Minister to basically stay away from Brookfield. And yet, here we have the Prime Minister meeting with the Chief Operating Officer, being personally lobbied by one of the major Brookfield companies that is on the list of companies that is captured in the screen. And I'm asking you, does that not raise questions about whether, in the face of all of Mr. Carney's conflicts, Brookfield has a direct line to the Prime Minister?
The incidents that you recited just now, would you please recite them again? Which ones are you talking about?
North River Midstream. Prime Minister personally was lobbied by them. He met with Sam Pollock.
What do you mean by he was personally lobbied by them?
He was lobbied by North River Midstream on April 30th. They met with him. And on May 6th.
But I'm sorry, when you say he was lobbied, there's
a disclosure of that.
Disclosure under the Lobbying Act that they made a representation to Mr. Carney?
That's right.
Okay. Go on, it's next one.
Mr. Pollock, the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure, and then in October, the Chief Operating Officer of Brookfield. It certainly seems like he has an awful lot of contact with Brookfield, and not just anyone from Brookfield, but the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure and the Chief Operating Officer of Brookfield.
And this was prior to the election, after the election?
It was after the election. All of these were after the election.
All of these were after. Yeah, I mean, you know what the rules are, and how this screen is established to prevent everything, etc. You're talking about the meeting with Mr. Bieber, etc. I understand from the Prime Minister, from Mr. Bieber's testimony, that this was about anti-Semitism. It had absolutely nothing to do with business, and that it was a personal visit, etc. Should it have taken place or not? You should have. That's for you to decide. It's really, if they talked about anti-Semitism, it's clearly not.
Certainly North River Midstream wasn't about that, and nor was the meeting with Sam Pollock in Washington, D.C. I would submit, and I think most Canadians would agree, that it would be a heck of a lot better if the Prime Minister just stayed away from Brookfield, but that isn't happening. Now,
Stayed away from Brookfield. No, that isn't happening, Michael. And of course, Michael Cooper has been a guest on the show many, many times over the years, and I'd like to have him back again. But I wanted to show this to you again because this is what's going on here. I just find this incredible. Mr. Carney's future compensation is tied to the success of Brookfield, says the ethics commissioner. It's like he never went away. That is the point we're trying to make here. It's like he never went away. And it's absolutely frightening. We've never had a government that is this cozy with global corporate entities. We've never had a prime minister who is this reluctant to step away from his private business dealings than Mark Carney. As I say, most prime ministers, most politicians are lawyers, and they tend not to be involved in globalist, transnational, multinational enterprises. Mark Carney is defined by that kind of activity, and it's dangerous to our democracy. Very dangerous. Here's Conservative MP Michael Barrett asking similar questions.
C-15 creates a new power for ministers to exempt companies from federal laws, and this can be done in secret. This opens the door to conflicts of interest that Parliament and your office might never see. If a minister can grant exemptions, and they can be granted to companies that they are connected to, even conceal their orders from public release, won't this at a minimum make it harder to detect that a conflict of interest exists? But doesn't it also create the opportunity for real conflicts of interest to occur with no effective oversight whatsoever?
Just because the minister is authorized by statute to do something doesn't mean he can avoid the conflict of interest to act. If it is part of his function to exempt the company, he can do that. If there, however, is under the act a conflict of interest, as you suggest in your example, then he has to recuse himself. The act is quite clear. He cannot participate in the decision. He can't even be in the room. He has to leave and absence himself when that decision is made.
It appears to be a systemic gap that's being created, though, Commissioner. It's a path for ministers to bypass the usual parliamentary safeguards and ethical scrutiny by shifting decisions into private exemption orders. Does that not present a cause for concern for parliamentarians?
I'm not sure I follow you. How, Mr. Barrett? Where is the shifting taking place here?
The effect of their orders is not public, and they can exempt the normal release of information that we would see, and it's for a period of years. and there would be no detection that it has occurred. So we assume that the minister leaves the room. But oftentimes, we find out only that a breach has occurred because of the release of information, access to information requests, inquiries of ministry, order paper questions, and the like.
When you say the exemption is secret, you mean the Act authorizes the minister to make a decision not to publicize it?
The information does not need to be publicized in the Gazette.
I'm sorry, if the company is exempted, that means if they weren't exempted, they couldn't do this. So presumably, the exemption has to be published somewhere.
One would hope that through the transparency that's required, then yes, but that's not the effect of the Budget Implementation Act, Bill C-15. Your question that I've provoked is born out of the same expectation I think that Canadians have about transparency and openness that we expect from government, when instead we're moving off the path of normal government and into exemptions to all laws except the criminal code is what the Act says.
Okay, well, first of all, C-15 is not law yet. It has to be passed by Parliament. Secondly, the obligation not to act in contravention of the conflict of interest is there. The minister cannot make such a thing. Now, you posit that he will make an exemption which benefits himself and people do not know about it. I always have difficulty answering a hypothetical question. If you give me an actual case and actual facts, I can answer that. I don't quite see how we can have a secret exemption. The effect of the exemption will be public, and people will ask, like you, why is this company doing it when normally an act would require A, B, and C? Where do they get the authority? So therefore, somebody will say, there is an exemption, here it is.
So to be clear, I don't see the mechanism in the legislation that would publish the exemptions that are able to be made to all laws except the Criminal Code, including the Lobbying Act, including access to information laws, and including the Conflict of Interest Act. But am I to understand then that the law as it's written, and should it come into force, without giving any hypothetical examples, that it gives no rise to concern for you?
The Act, Parliament has the authority to enact what they want. As you know, the Parliament is supreme. And if they will act that, we will look at the Act. I have not looked at it from this particular aspect that you mentioned, but I cannot understand the rationale how you can have an exemption that is secret and will not be. After all, it's an authorization. It has to appear somewhere.
Well, the expectation I think that Canadians have is, as Parliament is supreme and has passed laws, including the Conflict of Interest Act, the Lobbying Act, access to information laws, that there's no reason for a government to put forward legislation that gives them the opportunity to exempt themselves from all laws except the Criminal Code. I think that Canadians should be rightly concerned, and I certainly am. Okay.
Now, Conrad von Finkelstein is no amateur. This is a career bureaucrat who's been around for decades. He served under Stephen Harper. He served under Jean Chrétien, if I stand to be corrected there. He has served under Justin Trudeau to some degree. He's now serving under Mark Carney. This man knows his material, but yet he appears before this committee to not know what in the hell is going on. I find this very disturbing. And I don't know Conrad von Finkelstein. I knew his son, Phil von Finkelstein, when I worked on the Hill. But I always heard pretty good things about Conrad von Finkelstein. So I don't understand why he's just not able to understand these questions. It strikes me as passing strange. But everything about this strikes me as passing strange. Look at this here. This is the UAE connection. Wherever Mark Carney goes, Brookfield is not far behind, or Brookfield has just been there. Great reporting by independent or citizen journalist Andy Lee. And this is where we are. There they are. Here's one for you. It's one I just discovered this morning. I'm going to have to share the screen for it, though. Looky here. Look at this. Brookfield signs AI deal with Qatari company K, I think it's K or Kai, to form US $20 billion joint venture. That was barely reported. I found it on Bloomberg this morning, even though it was a Canadian press story. that Canadian newspapers, radio stations, television stations did not want to pick up. Look at this. Brookfield Asset Management Limited has signed a deal with Qatari artificial intelligence company K, sorry, I should have got the pronunciation of this, to form a US $20 billion joint venture. Kai is a subsidiary of the Qatar Investment Authority. So it's all corporate cronyism. And so what do you think? Do you think maybe Mark Carney had something to do with this while he was in the UAE? Qatar is just next door. What is going on? What kind of phone calls is he making? Who is he contacting? What advice is he giving? We don't know, because it's all being done in complete secrecy now. Now, if that doesn't scare the hell out of you in terms of where this country is going, and as I said, as you know, we're on the verge of passing a horrible censorship law, Bill C9. We might have a bit more about that one later, but it's not looking good for Canada. We have a prime minister who's completely fixated, completely obsessed with his own self-enrichment. And as the ethics commissioner said, his future, financial well-being is tied to the success of Brookfield. And all of it is in a blind trust under the governorship of his chief of staff. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Let's listen to a little of Pierre Poliev's speech last night. I think it was quite effective.
And the Conservative caucus are united. Yeah. We believe that Canada needs a pipeline to the Pacific, and that we need to override the discriminatory anti-Canada ban on shipping Canadian energy overseas. We need this pipeline because it will make for stronger take-home pay, it will make for affordable living, and it will make for a sovereign, self-reliant economy. Let's talk for a moment about the incredible benefits that such a pipeline would bring. It would allow us to move $30 billion a year of Canadian energy overseas to the 2.5 billion Asian customers that would then pay world prices for it. $30 billion would be the single biggest increase in overseas exports that any decision by this country could make. To put this into perspective, recently I pointed out that the Prime Minister, after running on the promise that we were in an existential crisis and needed to do the unimaginable at speeds not seen in generations, had not succeeded in removing a single foreign tariff on Canadian exports, despite countless months of world travel. He snapped back that there's been a trade deal with Indonesia. Well, forget the fact that it was the previous Prime Minister that negotiated that, something the current one has a bad habit of doing, is taking credit for things he did not do. But by the government's own projections, if that trade deal were to be as good as they promised, it would add $400 million to our exports. The pipeline to the Pacific would add 75 times more to Canada's exports overseas than the only agreement that the Prime Minister likes to brag about. So there is literally not a single trade deal you could sign, not a single government project you could fund that would come anywhere close to opening up the $30 billion of overseas non-U.S. exports that this single project would enable. It would mean thousands of extra jobs for Canadians in Western Canada, but also potentially in Central Canada, who might be the ones supplying the steel for this patriotic pipeline. It would mean the communities on the route would have new life, as workers would be filling restaurants with their paychecks. Local vendors would be able to sell more clothing, more housing supplies, and other goods to enable and rejuvenate communities all across the north part of Alberta and British Columbia, originating as it would be from hardest Alberta, in my wonderful riding. The best people in the world would therefore benefit from this incredible project. And I add, Madam Speaker, that it not only would it give paychecks, it would bring tax revenues that would allow us to fund more schools, hospitals, better policing, and increase social services, not through higher taxes, as the Liberals so often favor, but rather through a booming economy. Furthermore, when you export more Canadian goods abroad, you force other countries to buy Canadian dollars. That raises the dollar and therefore the purchasing power of our people. The cost of goods that are internationally priced become more affordable. More affordable food, fuel, and inputs to build housing. A stronger dollar means in a more affordable Canada, and that is our ultimate purpose. The biggest problem in Canada today is people cannot afford to live. After Liberals doubled housing costs, doubled the cost at the grocery store, doubled lineups at food banks, and doubled our national debt. One way to make life more affordable is to have a strong Canadian dollar that buys more food, fuel, and housing. All of these incredible benefits would be a no-brainer, and we shouldn't even have to debate it. In fact, Madam Speaker, we wouldn't have to debate it if the previous Conservative government's decision to approve the Northern Gateway pipeline to the Pacific had been allowed to go ahead. But in a November of 2016 cabinet decision, this Liberal government killed the Northern Gateway pipeline. The current Prime Minister, who was not in the cabinet at the time, went on to testify at the Industry Committee that he agreed with killing the Northern Gateway pipeline. The current government continues to have a tanker ban that blocks shipping Canadian oil off the northwest coast of BC, while allowing American tankers to move oil between Alaska and the U.S. West Coast. So apparently it's safe when the Americans transport oil through those same waters, but not when Canadians do it. Clearly an act by this government of economic self-harm, of discriminating against Canadians. Now, the Prime Minister suddenly claimed that he'd reversed himself. He signed an MOU. Now, to believe that he is actually committed to the MOU, you have to believe that he now says he was wrong about everything he wrote and that the Liberal government did in the preceding 10 years. That he was wrong about the emissions cap, wrong about the electricity regulations, wrong about shipping oil through a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, and wrong about the tanker ban. And he was wrong about all of those things, but you'd have to believe that he has accepted that wrong. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's give him a chance to come in the House of Commons and vote in favor of what he promised. So Conservatives brought forward a good faith motion just to make sure that Liberals meant what they said, to get them all in the House of Commons to vote on whether they want a pipeline to the Pacific and whether they're prepared to open up our waters to shipping energy overseas. Now, the Liberals went dead quiet. I expected them to enthusiastically applaud this gesture of goodwill. They went dead quiet over the weekend, telling reporters on background they had no idea how they were going to vote on their own MOU proposal for a pipeline and an adjustment to the oil tanker moratorium. I even used wording right out of the Prime Minister's MOU to make it easy for him. But it still wasn't easy enough. As we know with Liberals, they often start by making promises, and then they go to making excuses. So they've now been generating a whole lot of excuses about why they have to vote against the wording in their own MOU. Let's go through some of the excuses. That it didn't mention that they want to accompany the pipeline with a carbon capture project. They claimed that it didn't go far enough in spelling out Indigenous engagement and ownership. They claimed that it didn't clearly lay out the plan to engage with British Columbia. Now, forget for a second the obvious fact that if the Liberals are telling the truth when they say they support the whole MOU, then they should be prepared to vote for any part of the MOU. After all, it's their MOU. So that obvious contradiction aside, we know the Liberals have made these excuses. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm going to help brush away those excuses for them. We're going to amend our own motion in order to include the things that Liberals claim we left out. So we are going to amend the motion in favor so that it will support green lighting, carbon capture and storage, green lighting.
Now, that's exactly what they did. So it became almost a carbon copy of the Memorandum of Understanding. You're going to hear MOU so often, you're going to be sick and tired of hearing MOU. But as I've said repeatedly, MOUs are so common in government. You hear them, you see them all the time, and they have less basis than a contract. Let's put it that way. They're scraps of paper. This is why I'm very concerned about this whole thing. But anyway, Pierre Poliev, I think, outlines it here. When Poliev gets it right, I say he gets it right. He's never been misled by Mark Carney's apparent sincerity to suddenly get hip to pipelines. He knows it's a facade. He knows it's role-playing. He knows it's a lie. I don't know if Premier Danielle Smith of Alberta, who I still think is a fantastic premier, I don't quite understand what she's doing here. Whether she knows more than she is admitting, whether she has a secondary or tertiary plan. You know, people have talked about 5D chess. I mean, that's ridiculous. But is she outthinking Carney on this one? I don't know. I do think she's probably the best leader Alberta has had since Ralph Klein. No question about that. But I don't know. And I'm trying to get her on the show to talk about this. But I'm certainly not going to take pot shots at Danielle Smith for anything. I think she's done some great work as premier. I don't agree with what she's doing with this MOU, but hey, I don't have to agree with everything she does. I think she might have another plan here. I hope she does, but I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend I do. Now let's have a look at some incredible story. I just find this absolutely astounding. And bear in mind that I do work for Blaze Media. So, no, this is, get this one though. Sean Fraser, the Attorney General, don't worry about the religious exemption being taken out of Bill C-9. Oh, we have the freedom of religion and the Charter of Rights. Well, we saw how far freedom of religion is protected in Canada when Sean Foyt made his cross-country trip last summer and tried to perform gospel music in public venues. He was, at one point, physically attacked in Montreal. The church was fined $10,000. He was denied access to public places across Canada because he was an evangelical Christian. Oh, I thought we had freedom of religion. Bullshit. We don't have freedom of religion. I love this story here. Glenn Beck. This is a woman, and I find this absolutely incredible. This is a woman in Saskatchewan who can't get an operation because of Canada's horrible, damnable healthcare system where you can be waiting 6 months for a hip replacement, maybe a year, and vital heart operation, maybe 3 or 4 months. You'd be dead by the time you get the operation. How about cancer surgery? You could be waiting a year and you'll probably be dead in the year. But the government will come through and give you medical assistance in dying because you're going to be so depressed over things, you'll want it. So Glenn Beck's he thinks this is outrageous. And he's in contact with this woman, Jolene, and her husband. Please continue to pray for her health. Glenn Beck says, we have surgeons in the U.S. who are standing by to help Jolene. And here she is, Jolene Van Alstine. And she says, and this is heartbreaking. She replies to Glenn Beck, "Do you mean that? I am Jolene Van Alstyne, the person in the article." Yes, and I write for Blaze Media. I'm going to see if I can do something with this. If there's any surgeon in America who can do this, I'll pay for this patient to come down here for treatment. This is the reality of compassionate, progressive healthcare. Canada must end this insanity, and Americans can never let it spread here. This is a two-pronged story, people. It's not only Canada's horrible healthcare system where you die waiting for an operation. It's the fact that while you're waiting for the operation, the government comes by and offers you MAiD, not once, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times. They can't operate, but they'll let you do your self-deletion. I think I still have to say that. Incredible story. Glenn Beck says, if there's any surgeon in America who can do this, I'll pay for this patient to come down here for treatment. Thank God, Glenn. Look at this, eh? She visited the Rachel Cohen Booth writes, this is a nightmare. She visited the provincial legislature on Tuesday to plead for help getting surgery to remove her remaining parathyroid gland. Currently, there is no Saskatchewan surgeon able to perform the operation. Holy crap. Van Alstyne said she must be referred out of province, but she can't obtain a referral without first being seen by an endocrinologist. And none of them are accepting new patients. This is Canada. Sorry, no new patients. You just have to go home and die. Van Alstyne said, the pain has become so unbearable that she has applied and been approved for MAiD on January 7th. This woman has less than a month to live unless we do something about it. Incredible. And this, look at this, EU and Canada are in a digital partnership. And here's Andrew Lawton. I want to look into this more because C9 is an evil bill. We don't want to start saying, okay, let's just put more hate symbols into the bill. So anything is a hate symbol. But Andrew, I think this was strategic to show this is not about hatred. This is about political control. I moved an amendment to Bill C9 to list the hammer and sickle as a hate symbol. 100 million people have died under that insignia, with countless more oppressed. The Liberal and Bloc committee members voted it down. Why? Because commies are good. Vladimir Lenin? Oh, very progressive. Joe Stalin? Collective farms were fantastic. Chairman Mao Zedong? Well, he raised the literacy level, just like Fidel Castro. More Cubans can read and write now because of Fidel Castro. Yeah, they can read their books in prison, just like they could. And now, encourage you to watch this interview this afternoon. We're going to go back, and I'm going to show you a couple of videos here. I interviewed Katie Pesitney yesterday. See, I finally, always pronouncing her last name right. I had some joker criticized me for that a couple of weeks ago. And by the way, I know there's morons, haters, lowlifes out there who think Katie and her mom somehow are multimillionaires and they made all kinds of money off of this tragedy. I would love to see these lowlifes go through 1/10 of the misery and pain that Katie and her mom went through. So go to hell. You want to criticize me for helping Katie and her mom get back on their feet? You can go to hell. I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to help them fundraise, and I'm going to help them get a farm back and they get their lives back, because they were treated abominably by the federal government and by yokels and monsters like you who can't stand people standing up for their freedom and their dignity. Let's listen to what Katie has to say about the rebirth of Universal Ostrich Farms.
Who wouldn't be struggling after what the world has just witnessed and the massacre of these big, beautiful prehistoric animals that were not around for just a few years? They were decades old. I don't need to tell all of you that. But it's been challenging. It's been challenging there's been anxiety, there's been sleepless nights, there is PTSD. There's personally, I'm happy to share with other people. I just want people to know that they're not alone from all the messages that I get, panic attacks. And it's something that is very new, but I think it's just going to be part of the process. And the one big thing that feels so well or so good is that we have so much support. There's a lot of people that are carrying the same burdens that we are. The sleepless nights, the anxiety, hearing that those gunshots go off in your head, and just what we all witnessed. And so all those people have been reaching out. There's been hundreds of people reaching out across the world. And it just feels really good that we can walk through this journey together, because no one should ever have to walk through this alone. And none of us were expecting, I don't think, what we witnessed. I mean, we thought time and time again, I get messages that people said, I just thought that we would get through this with the ostriches alive.
Yeah. I think we both did. And it was almost beyond shocking that it didn't turn out that way. But as for the future, and you were telling me yesterday that you and your mom want to continue with an ostrich farm, but not necessarily 300 to 400 ostriches, maybe 50. And what kind of farm do you imagine this? Almost like a part petting zoo, part remembrance, part a place for people to come and reflect on animals and themselves. How do you see this new development going?
I think as we go forward, it's changed in our minds quite a bit in the last 30 days. But the one thing that keeps a light in our heart is just having ostriches again, because they've been such an important part of our life, and we are huge animal lovers. And it would just feel so wonderful to have them back. We still believe, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I mean, it's a very real one, that there's missing ostriches. We firmly believe that. And we want to believe that this is such a big story that one day we will get some of our own babies back. Maybe that's wishful thinking. I don't know, but there's whistleblowers everywhere. And this would be one miracle before Christmas. That would be amazing. But even after Christmas is fine. A remembrance, legacy farm, something where we have so many people we've met, and there's been thousands of people through this farm, that somewhere where my mom could continue to educate and bring awareness of how amazing these ostriches are, these prehistoric wonders that became beacons of hope for many across the world, to get up close, personal, but also have time with my mom's knowledge, our family's knowledge about these animals, the compassion, the healing that they can bring, and to maybe even hatch and incubate and just show people it is a beautiful, beautiful thing when you get to see those little babies running around, and just to have a legacy remembrance ranch or a legacy remembrance farm, and then also get to go on a healing journey with everybody that has been on this really catastrophic disaster that we've been through, and what we've witnessed. So we want to put all of our energy into something that's going to be beautiful, but not just for us to help heal, but for the world, and invite people from all around the world to come and see us and to come see the ostriches.
I'm going to show you one more clip here, and I'm going to show you part of the clip, and you have to watch the interview, the whole interview, which is premiering today at 1 p.m. If you want to find out what she's talking about here. But Katie says the CFIA left a very cryptic and enigmatic number 79 on the death pens. What did it mean?
The day that Super Save came on site and they were part of the disposal process, and we had garbage bin after garbage bin leaving here. Those garbage bins were leaving with police escorts all the time. Those garbage bins were not being sanitized. Those garbage bins were in and out of here, but there was a large number of garbage bins. So then towards the middle of the time, say about 2 weeks in with Canadian Food Inspection Agency here, those garbage bins started to slow down, even though that they claimed that they were for garbage, they were for their lunch garbage, hazmat suit garbage, and you name it. They said, no, this is just garbage from our officers from CFIA. So for some reason, the amount of officers didn't go down and the CFIA agents actually went up, but there was less garbage bins. Now that came at the same time when the number 79 appeared on the inside of our kill pen. We don't know what that number 79 means, but it is about the right number that approximately of ostriches that we were seeing the number and the population of our ostriches go down. And we were not the only ones. Everyone across the world was witnessing that.
Had to be the CFIA or the RCMP wrote that. Nobody else had access to the kill pen. You couldn't get in there. They couldn't even get past those blue iron gates, the fencing. So it had to be the CFIA who put that number there. What the hell game were they playing? Watch the whole interview with me. At 1 p.m. Eastern time, it's going to be premiering. And it's a great, great interview. And watch me tonight, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time with Nico Logan on the Conservative Corner. It's always a pleasure to talk to Nico. He's become a very good friend. Thanks for watching. God bless. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Thank you for sharing this station with your friends and family. Thank you for hitting that like button, because I tell you, we are fighting back in a way I've never had to before, because I'm going to keep this station on the air. I am going to keep fighting for freedom. I'm going to keep fighting for justice and truth. And I am damn determined to resist this Carney government in any way possible as it encroaches upon our individual freedom. And it will continue to do that, mark my words. I'll be back again tomorrow. Same time, same place. 10 a.m. This has been David Creighton, broadcasting live from our nation's capital in Ottawa. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow.